America's Book Club host David Rubenstein and Supreme Court Associate Justice Amy Coney Barrett viewed treasures from the Folger Shakespeare Library's archive that related to the law.
Hello there.
Hello,
Hi.
nice to see you
nice
again.
Nice to see you too.
You and Farah have been so generous in
well, we're always happy to have you come over.
And
so, yes,
okay.
indeed, yes. Hi
See
there.
you again.
Good to
How are
see
you?
Again. Well, we got a few things out to take a look at from the Folger collection. So we're going to move this way. This is a manuscript book, all written out by hand, 1575, and it's a justice's handbook. So it's all material that was copied out for the use of a justice in their work. And it's just examples and things to draw from. This particular opening, there's all this poetry copied out, all about just sort of aphorisms about the law. And it has the Latin phrase in here that translates to, from bad habits come good laws.
From bad habits come good laws?
Yes.
That's one I haven't heard before.
So, there you go.
I'll file that one away. That's
right.
So cool.
Yeah.
So you've been told how many first folios there are that they told you, right, or not?
I got to see it in
First
the spring.
folios, you did see them, yes.
I got to see them in the spring.
You've seen them. So there are, in the total, in the world, there are how many first folios?
235 that we know of.
200, you own 235?
No, that's the total in the world.
235, but you own 80.
82.
So you have about a third or so of all
That's
of them.
right. And that was Henry and Emily Folger, of course, collecting voraciously everything related to Shakespeare. And that includes this material. So the smaller format, single play, really kind of cheaply produced editions that would have been printed in Shakespeare's lifetime, because of course the first folio was after Shakespeare's death. So this is 1594. It's Henry VI, Part 2. And it has this reference here at the top, that is it not a miserable thing that the skin of an innocent lamb should parchment be made, and then with a little blotting over with ink, a man should undo himself. So in, Shakespeare, of course, wrote about the courts and the law frequently, and I think that's one example, but it's interesting because he's referring literally to the physical material. And so what I have out here is really that skin of an innocent lamb. This is all parchment that has been individual sheets that are stitched together, and they make these rolls. So these are rolls of the court from Norfolk in England. There's actually 8 of these total in this collection, and they span from 1511 to 1631. So this is all organized around the manor in this location that then organized the landholding and then the rights and privileges of various members of that society, which then was contested at court. And these rolls contain those records. And this was a very common form for this kind of legal material, of course. Then they switch over to bound ledger books, but they're still referred to as court rolls, right? Because of the physical form that they're in, which I think, again, ties back to these words on the stage about the skin of the lamb. Yeah.
Greg, that is really, really amazing. Thank you for
Mr.
outdone
Folger,
yourself.
they told you, he was basically John D. Rockefeller's partner, is that right? So he made his money from being a partner with Johnny Rockefeller, and he had this interest in this area, so he bought up these documents before the world recognized what he was doing. So today, you probably wouldn't be able to take this many first folios out of England, because they would say, hey, wait a second, we want it here. And they weren't that happy about it at the time. People knew about it, but it wasn't as big a deal as it probably would be today. I bought the only copy that's out of the United States of the Magna Carta. And
You did?
yes,
Wow.
there are 17 extant copies of the Magna Carta, and one of them was bought years ago by Ross Perot, and he brought it to the United States, and he didn't really have a license for it, but anyway, he bought it here, and then he put it up for sale. I bought it a number of years ago, and I put it on permanent display at the National Archives. But today, I don't think you could buy a copy of the Magna Carta and take it out of England. It'd be too controversial. But these days, they didn't have as big a deal about it, and people bought these things and they got them out. Mr. Folger didn't live to see this library open, though. He died, a couple of years before?
Yeah, a couple of years, 28.
A couple of years before.
But he was collecting right up until the end of his life. I believe they acquired these in 1924, 1925. So Henry and Emily
Which she took
Folger,
over, right, after he
she
died.
took over,
Yeah.
and she really is the one responsible for this institution really coming to life. All the administrative things that had to happen, she took care of. And they were finally able to realize this dream of a library collection that scholars could use. They were buying things like this. They didn't know what was in here or why, but it covered those years of Shakespeare's life. And so they wanted to create this collection that people could make discoveries in.
So the college, I think the library was given initially, as I understood it, to Amherst College. Is that right?
Yes, and it is still, that is the terms of the bequest.
Amherst still technically owns the whole Folger Library, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yep.
That's right, you had mentioned that.
So it's an incredible collection, and there's nothing quite like this in Washington. There's a private library that has this kind of collection. The Library of Congress is incredible what they have, and you've obviously seen one, but it's nothing quite like this. And this has no government connection, though. So almost every other museum in the city or things like this is government connected, but this is unrelated to the government.
That is correct. But the Folgers did intend that this would be a gift for the American people, and they situated the library here right on Capitol Hill. I think the association physically with the Library of Congress was important to them, and they knew the city well. So I think they had this vision of Washington, D.C. becoming a cultural capital, not just a political capital. And so, of course, Shakespeare, this original material had to underpin that kind of status.
Well, and it's been a huge gift. My law clerks and I and my staff came, and Greg and Farah gave us a tour of the library. We got to see the folios last spring. And it's amazing.
It is. And it's great now to be able to have all that material out on exhibition so anyone can come and see it when they're here in DC looking at everything else.
So I interviewed somebody here recently for this show. It's a woman who's an author, writes novels, and her latest novel basically says there was a woman who really wrote some of Shakespeare's plays. And that because of the time, women weren't given credit for things, people kind of didn't want to mention her. And that's her theory, it's a novel, but it's interesting. We don't still know for sure whether William Shakespeare wrote all these plays or not. Is that fair?
So we do know that he wrote a substantial number of them, but even this particular quarto is one in which we think it was more highly collaborative than even some of the others. But really, theater making at that time was highly collaborative. There were a lot of people involved. It was happening very fast. Lots of plays being put on at a time. So you can see traces of that. But yes, they're definitely among even sort of the accepted canon of Shakespeare's plays.
The theory was at the time, Shakespeare didn't go to college, therefore not highly educated. So how could somebody not college educated write such wonderful plays that have never been replicated by anybody else since that time? He had no real education. Now, people would say, well, he was an actor and he was pretty smart even if he didn't go to college, but nobody really knows. And the amazing thing about the first folio, it didn't come out to 6 or 7 years after he died. So in other words, somebody gathered up all of his plays 6 or 7 years after he died, and then they published them. But this was actually, not like a year after he died. It was, 6 or 7 years, something like that.
Right.
And nobody really knows about him all that much. We know kind of when he was born, when he died, where he's buried. He was married, and then when he died, in his will, he left his second-hand bed to his wife. That was the only thing I think in his will he left to his wife or something like that.
Right.
Spend a whole lot of time during the marriage
Right.
Yes.
with his wife.
He had 3 daughters, is that right?
Yes, and
And he has a son, too,
yes,
right?
that he
He had a
lost.
son?
lost.
He died early, yeah.
Yes.
Hamnet.
Right.
Yes.
Right. All of which, over many years has been this sort of rich source for these questions about how did this happen? Where did these things come from? And I think the Folgers, again, they were collecting so vigorously because they just knew that if they did that, at some point they could make all this material available, and people would be able to make new discoveries.
And I love that they collected things that weren't directly related to Shakespeare, too, but just put Shakespeare in historical context.
That's right. In all different kinds of conditions. There are some collectors in that era who would only collect the most pristine, beautiful copies. And that wasn't the Folgers. They wanted They wanted the material that would have information that people could see.
Yeah.
So what is your theory about who wrote all the plays?
I was just about to say, it sounds like you're,
Well,
she persuaded you.
Well, nobody knows, but I think he probably wrote a lot of them, but probably in collaboration with people, would be my guess.
I think there's absolutely collaboration, and I think this is a good example of that. But there are identifiable ways that he uses language that I think you really can trace. My feeling is, I'm not as concerned about the education. He makes his way, he's an artist, he's very creative, and he's at court, he's around a lot of influential people. So he's exposed to all sorts of things in this highly collaborative environment. So I just think, like, even today, some musicians that become very, very well known and renowned
without training
come from, right.
In those days, all the women's parts, though, were played by men. But women weren't allowed to do this. So, strange situation. So thank you very much.
Of course, my pleasure.
So,
anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. I might impose on you again in the
Please,
spring with
yes.
my new batch of
That'd be
clerks.
great.
They
yes.
loved it.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
did too.
Please do.